I experienced a lot of sadness, frustration, and a lot of beauty and a lot of like amazing experiences. But some part of me is still attached to these kind of depressive, melancholic, kind of expressions of myself, even when things are actually going great.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's hard for me to let go of this aspect of my past, which has been woven and tied in a bunch of bow ties around my identity as, well, I just have, these kind of melancholic, nature that kind of I can burst through for periods, but I always kind of settle back to this.
Yeah.
And there's really no reason for it.
Yeah.
It seems like it's something that I'm dragging from the, graveyard of my past into this present reality where it doesn't even make sense anymore.
Right.
But I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
And so like, what is the practice? What is the practice of kind of untying these knots that you would recommend for me?
It's beautiful. And I'm glad that you, as like last time, willing to share something about yourself. So if you look at the way that you phrased it, right? Like this melancholic, like energetically, what does that represent? Like, how does that feel in the body? Shitty for sure. But in terms of like, I'm looking for like a weight, right? There's a heaviness to it.
Damp and heavy.
Yeah. Right. So, that falls into what we could say the bucket of depression. And the two predominant emotions that humans deal with are anxiety and depression, right? And then you got the sort of the bedfellows or the ancillary sort of emotions that go with that. So we look at yours, depression. Well, if we were to associate either of them with time, depression is a past-based emotion. Anxiety is a future-based, right? So your tendency, therefore, what I hear immediately is, okay, one, you're going to have mimicked that at some level. I'm not denying that you've got your own versions of heaviness, but often one of the greatest, ways that we learn as humans is by mimicking. Our care providers, our parents, whoever it is, people that we aspire to or we look up to. So at one level, there may be a lineage, because you said it's almost like it feels like this graveyard version, which could actually be prior to you, right? Like maybe there was a tendency, and again,
my dad.
Okay, there you go. So there may be a depression that is a lineage that you have energetically inherited. No different to somebody saying, oh, well, I'm Christian. You're not. And, going to get a lot of DMs now. You may subscribe to the tenets of Christianity, which is beautiful, and that's a choice. But if you're declaring yourself as that, you're stuck, and that's going to create more segregation and separation. And invariably, it's not something you chose. It was something you inherited because your parents were. None of which is wrong, but let's just understand the mechanics of what's actually going on, right? So likewise, so if your dad, you're telling me he had a depressive tendency or he struggled with depression. So you're in a household where energetically you're exposed to that. Not good or bad. It's just like, if you grew up in Madrid, you're going to learn to speak Spanish. Why? Because you're exposed to that, right? So, okay, great. So we can see there's that part. So there may be a predisposition. And, somebody might even from the perspective of genetics say, okay, well, you've got certain makeup that has a tendency towards that in terms of chemicals. And then we can look at, okay, what else, aside from that which you've inherited, is more personal to you? Now, we got a glimpse of it in our last podcast, right? Which hopefully people will, if they haven't seen it, they'll revisit it because it was very powerful. Please do. Where you recognized that you put so much pressure on yourself. And we cited a particular game when you were 17 and you were pulled out at the end, and the guy that replaced you gave up a basket to the guy that you were defending.
Yep.
And that subsequent to that event, you'd put a lot of pressure on yourself. What does that create? That's a heaviness too, right? So now, we're seeing a bit of a trend here, right? So it is the energy of oppression itself, which is something I've been talking a lot about, helping people, is to see, okay, yes, it's easy to look out there and blame police or blame government or whatever is going on, but where is that energy of oppression, judgment, even violence? It might not be physical, but violent to oneself within you, because collectively, we are the sum of the individual parts, right? If we look at the debt of a nation, in a very big part, it is a reflection of the debt of the hundreds of millions of people. If you carry debt on your credit card and you're one person of 300 million, then collectively, it doesn't take, again, a rocket scientist to recognize, okay, well, the nation is in debt, right? So likewise for you, recognizing where is that heaviness, the oppression, the judgment that you have of self that is a bedfellow of the depression that you saw in your dad. Now you're smiling, so something's maybe coming to mind.
Well, I'm just recognizing that this is a form of oppression of self.
Yeah.
I think that's where the smile came from, is this, I just felt the key turn in a lock where
Nice.
it's like recognizing like, all right, this is this judgmental oppressive energy that I'm feeling, that I learned, but that I'm continuing to exacerbate out of habit.
Yeah.
But it gives me, like, seeing where it's coming from then lets me say, all right, well, what's the opposite of that then? If it's judgment,
Great.
if it's all of these different things, well, what's the opposite of that? Well,
before we go there, because you're a quick study and, you've been in my presence once before, so you kind of know how the story ends, but there's a succinct way to get there,
okay,
right?
Which go.
So what is the antithesis? Instead of looking at it as the opposite, what is the reaction to oppression?
Well, it oftentimes is anger or aggression.
Yeah, defiance,
Mm-hmm.
which again, we're seeing on the collective, right?
Yeah.
So now within you, without spending a lot of time with you, I could guess that at times you get pissed or you get angry. It may not be overt, it may be towards self.
Usually.
But that, first of all, we got to recognize the duality of oppression that then creates the equal and opposite reaction of aggression, defiance, and frustration. So now you're in this battle, which is the war within, which is now expressed in the world outside, because you take, again, billions of people who have their own version to varying degrees, and you put them all on a ball of mud floating through space, well, then that ball of mud it's got a lot of that energy.
Mm-hmm.
So this is beautiful because it may seem a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Not self-righteous, but like I would assert that even in sitting in this conversation, we're healing the planet, right? Because if we can, together in this conversation, mitigate, offset, reconcile some of the oppression that you have, maybe all of the oppression, then that's a little bit that is now removed from the collective.
Yeah, we're stealing marbles from the giant palette of marbles of oppression.
Yes.
We're taking our own little part. Amazing.
So now we've got, like, similar to this, it's a little bit uneven, but like, the yin and the yang of this, like, mat, the white and the black, that is the conversation out there, the oppression and the defiance. So the defiance is a reaction. The oppression is what inspires it. So if we want to go to the root cause, it's okay to be angry. Like when you go near a dog and it growls or it tries to bite you, the instantaneous human reaction is like, oh, wow, that dog's an ass, or like, that's a bad dog. But if you know its history and the fact that it had an owner previously who hit the dog, and so now it's collapsed, someone coming near it as a potential threat, you would have compassion and say, oh, wow, it's not a bad dog. It's been conditioned to protect itself based on oppression. So, and I want to come back to a great video that just popped to mind that people will really enjoy, that really highlights this. So what we want to recognize is that within Aubrey, there is this duality and there is this battle. The defiance, the anger, which is a reaction to the oppression. So you have learned oppression. You've learned self-judgment. It is part of your conversation. And these, to me, are the real insidious killers of any human being. It is in that world of should, have to, need, must. Like, those words are the biggest killers over time to any human being. Why I assert, as a human species, we're exhausted. People's adrenals are shot. People are unfulfilled in their marriages, in their relationships, in their workplace, because they're under constant ideation of pressure. I have to, I should. So can you locate in you, in your dialogue, any of that oppressive language?
Of course. And what comes to mind is, and I want to get this out because I think it's really important, I have a deep attachment to an identity as someone who is, as my spiritual mentor Don Howard said, para el bien de todos, dedicated for the good of all. And that has an external validation signature of that I'm actually creating in my own mind of what that looks like.
Yes.
Based on my own, because I know I had a head start. You can call that privilege. That's the word that's being used right now. And I think that really should be looked at as like an N equals 1, but I can acknowledge it in myself. Fuck yeah, I was privileged. I had all of the resources, all of the abilities, and I've always felt that. And so I think to kind of justify like everything that I've been given, which has been enormous, I've said, all right, well, I have to accomplish something really great. And that really great has some external marker that I've made up in my mind it's always elusive. No matter what I accomplish, it's always a little bit farther and it's a little bit farther and I'm never quite there and I'm never quite doing enough. And I'm constantly judging myself and which is actually limiting me from doing the very best that I fucking can. I'm like
100%.
I'm just constantly dampening myself because I'm saying that I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not helping enough, I'm not reaching my potential. And that's actually the thing that's limiting me from reaching my potential.
Amazing. It's what I call chasing horizons.
Yeah.
Right? You can never get there. So beautifully articulated. And if you listen to the language, you say, I have to, whether it is, transform the planet and make a difference. And especially with the backdrop of this privileged lifestyle, I've worked with a lot of people who did have beautiful, resourceful, like full FULL lives, who then feel the sort of the weight and the burden of like, wow, I better make sure that I do something with my life because otherwise, I really effed up. Right.
Right.
But that language, feel into it. And I'm using this word very, with conscious choice, it's abusive.
Agreed.
Now, why I use it is because you look at the abhorrent behaviors that are happening out there that are abusive, disgusting, as an extension of the essence of the energy that is prevalent and present within every human being. So what is the opportunity for real healing? It is to recognize, to expose, to bring awareness, phase 1, to where am I abusive? Where do I carry the energy of abuse within myself? Where do I carry the energy of oppression, of judgment within myself? To which I am naturally going to have what we see on the other side, the defiance, the depression, because that interchange is heavy. It creates weight. When I help people with procrastination, this is the dynamic we're talking about. Why am I not realizing my potential? Because you're in conflict with the judgment of yourself and then the apathetic response of defiance. Either you go angry or you go withdrawn. Right? Fight, flight, or freeze. Think about it, right? Fight, anger, flight, run away, fucking ignore it, skip town. I'm not going to deal with it. Freeze, complete apathy and procrastination. You tend to probably be more in the fight bracket just because of your constitution, but it's still a byproduct of the oppression, the dialogue, the narrative that you have, which is self-inflicting. And it's not your fault. It's a mechanistic approach. It's human, which is to say that there is something fundamentally wrong with who you are and what you're doing. So now we can start to get to where you were getting to. But first, I just want you to presence that because it's very real for you, right?
Yeah.
And there's massive cost, not only in terms of, as you said, your capacity to make a difference, which we highlighted last time beautifully. What's really hit a nerve for you is that you genuinely care about people and you really want to make a difference. But in the space of the construct that you're always letting people down, that is completely thwarted.
Yeah.
Right? At best, you're maybe improving people. But because you really want to make a difference, but you're too busy beating the shit out of yourself. And again, I'm using a broad stroke. You're not doing it every day. But that energy is still present within you. Your ability to truly impact change is completely compromised because you're too busy being right about the fact that you're not doing enough.
Yeah. Yep.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it is.
Have another drink or take another pill or, right? Yeah. So now this is so beautiful because I guarantee there's not one person out there by virtue of the fact that they're human who can't relate to this mechanism within themselves to whatever degree, to the heights of insanity where they're really taking that and superimposing on others and abusing others, or to the fact that they're just a recluse who is just living in a complete state of stagnation because they're too scared to get out there because they're just a failure. And what's the point? They've completely resigned themselves to the fact that they've got nothing to offer, because they've got a dialogue about themselves, which itself is completely judgmental and abusive.
Yeah.
But it's a conversation. And the one thing I know for sure is everybody can transcend a conversation. So is it true, Aubrey, that there is anything that you should do? Yes or no?
I know the right answer. The right answer is no.
You're not
the
listening.
right answer is no.
Right. Thank you.
It's a hard answer for me to give.
It's a hard answer for the part of you that is habitually conditioned to believe that you should be.
Agreed.
It's not for you. For you, it is a liberating answer. For the real you beneath the surface of the narrative that you've inherited, reinforced over time for 3-4 decades, it is a conflict to what you currently believe. It is nonetheless the truth of what is on the other side of the construct you've been stuck within, for which reason it's emancipation.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Beautiful. So now stick with me. In the absence of the belief that there's anything that you should do, feel into the energy of it. In the absence of the belief there's anything you have to do, what becomes available in the way that you feel, we got a glimpse, and what becomes available for you and what becomes possible.
The feeling it's a feeling of effervescence, where the other was damp and heavy. This is like bubbles in a champagne glass. It's like rising without any effort at all. Yeah. And from that, I can also feel the magic of my brain coming alive and the magic of creativity and all of these different things that are associated with that kind of energy, that freedom, that liberation from this heaviness is now all available because I'm excited, I'm inspired, I'm fired up. And it's really remarkable, and I think what you were saying is so important. It's really remarkable how we're attached to certain aspects of ourselves that we want to prove as correct that are not serving us.
Yeah, not at all. It's quite the antithesis. So this is beautiful. You're such a joy to be with. You're such a great listener, apart from the fact you didn't quite answer my question. You'll be a better listener. So it is really such a gift to be with you because of your audience and the impact that I hope this has, but also for people to recognize that just by design, the human aspect of us is built to be in conflict, to create resistance. And it's a very detrimental, disease-ridden approach to being human. It denies our vitality. It cuts off our aliveness. The world doesn't need Aubrey Marcus to do more shit for it. It doesn't. What the world is desperately craving is a human being who embodies the essence of love and peace of self. So you just sitting with me, it just gave me tingles. You sitting with me in the last 5 minutes, I would assert, is more profound and palpable and powerful in the impact that you just made compared to 2 decades of you striving to do something externally that might make people's lives better. Because energetically, the resonance of what you just embodied, and that will take practice to live from, is what we crave as a species. Is a man, particularly a white man, who is not coming from the energy of oppression, judgment, self-loathing, that then is being met with the defiance of anger and frustration and control, but rather transcends all of that and comes from a place of self-acceptance, of humanity, of kindness, of gentleness to self, of love and unity with self and other. That is the precursor to an entirely different type of human and consequently an entirely different society.
Amen.